Welcome to Kevin Richards VIPs. This week's guest has chosen a career with the animals that share this planet that would usually freak you out, turtles and snakes and lizards. He's an amazing man, and this week we get to know Jeff Hathaway. So we're sitting in Scales Nature Park. This place is fascinating, and if you have any fear of snakes or turtles or anything, they're all behind glass, and it's all totally fun and totally amazing and educational. And the guy behind it all is a good old friend, Jeff Hathaway. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Kevin.
No problem. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, and it's nice that we finally have some time to do this. So, Jeff,
Sure.
There's so much to talk about when it comes to the snakes and everything around us, but let's talk a little bit first about you. I'd like to know, I think the viewers need to know that you're a Barrie boy,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I live at Lefroy.
Lived in Lefroy.
Lefroy High School in Barrie, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So where'd you go to school?
Barrie Central.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so what was it about Central that you think was, like, how do you feel about it being torn down? How do you really feel?
Sad. I went to the reunion, of course, the last days. It was bittersweet for sure, but it was also cool to see some people I hadn't seen for a long time and run into some old teachers and, certainly lots of fond memories.
Where was it where you started thinking, wow, I want to get involved with turtles, or not a lot of people say they want to get involved with snakes. They just don't, right?
That's fair, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up in the country, I had a lot of exposure to turtles and snakes and frogs and all of those sorts of things. I grew up right on Lake Simcoe. It was a very idyllic childhood. Go out and play in the forest and that sort of stuff. And I always loved nature and wildlife, and I always sort of had an aim for a career in that kind of environment. Certainly noticed a lot of things related to conservation, habitat loss, and that kind of stuff through all of my childhood, and just watching it happen, and through all of Simcoe County definitely had a role to play, I think.
Yeah. Well, Lake Simcoe being the fourth largest lake in Ontario, right? It's a big deal, and I always found it the crown jewel of Ontario. Let's be honest. It's it's environmentally diverse. Right?
Yeah, it's a spectacular lake, really. And we've done a lot of damage to it, but we've also done a lot to try and heal it as well. And we're continuing to make progress on that front, so it's encouraging.
Well, removing invasive species and trying to keep the phosphorus at reasonable levels or less is very important. And I think we've both noticed that those changes in, Bradford and other places where there's such, mass growth of everything from making sod and all these different cattle and all these things where there's runoff. So you being an environmental junkie, let's call you junkie for that. You're loving the environment, you're embracing it. So you're seeing these changes. Is this part of where your pioneering aspect came from to help?
I think so, but particularly for me, a lot of it was declines in some of the species that I've chosen to work with and their habitat. I mean, we've done a lot to help Lake Simcoe, but certainly locally we've lost a lot of wetland habitat, and that's true for all over southern Ontario. We've lost about 75% of our wetland habitat south of the Canadian Shield. So you drive around now, you don't realize what the landscape looked like 200 years ago, but it was very different. And a lot of the species that depend on that wetland habitat, well, they're either reduced in numbers or long gone.
Sure.
So to do what we can to try and fix that.
That makes sense. So when you're looking around now, what is it that is giving you your real drive? What is it you see that you really want to change? And then I want to, of course, unpack all the stuff we've got going on behind us here. But so what is it that's really giving you your drive to want to do this now?
Yeah, well, some days I wonder. It's 25 years now I've been doing this kind of stuff, whether it's education or direct field work and all, the whole mixed bag of crazy things that I do. What really drives me? Just trying to find ways to keep some of these animals around and reverse their population declines. A big factor in it. And of course, now to have a son, I've got kind of an extra reason to care even more about stuff and make sure that it's around for the future. And
I try not to get too distracted sitting in here, but you've got a little turtle walking through here.
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, right on cue. Mrs. B has arrived here. So
and you're doing what we call the hamburger hold? Is that?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, hold it like a hamburger, and it works very well to describe it to people. Right? Everybody knows what you're talking about as soon as you say that.
Now, I'm going to ask you this, because there are a lot of places in Barrie, especially around that Ferndale Road area where that little conservation area is, where turtles are crossing the road.
Yes.
All right. And I told you my story about how difficult it was one day when I tried. And I've picked up easily 50 plus turtles between Ferndale and outside of the Barrie area, that just to help them get across the road. I love the turtles. But the one day I had a snapping turtle, must have been 20 plus pounds, and I went to go pick it up, and that thing took off, like turned around on me, scared the heck out of me. Give me an idea on how to help a turtle across the road, because there's a lot of people who I'm sure are seeing these turtles and are just trying to drive around them.
Yeah.
When maybe they could help.
Well, there's lots of interest in people helping turtles, which is great to see. So maybe let's start with the easy ones, and we'll come back to the snapper at the end. So the main thing to realize with turtles is that, of course, an adult turtle normally lives for a very long time. This turtle was actually hit by a car many years ago, like more than 50 years ago. If you go back through the ownership of this turtle's been passed down from person to person. At one point she was hit by a car, and the person who patched her up didn't put her back in the wild like they should have. That would have been the best thing to do, of course. It didn't happen. People had different attitudes that long ago. But the fact is she was an adult turtle that was up to lay eggs when that happened. So this turtle is potentially well over 75, maybe over 100 years old. And that's pretty typical for turtles. They live a very long time, and it's important for the females to lay eggs for a very long time to keep their population stable. So the death of even a few on the roads is a really big blow to the population, and anything we can do to protect those individual turtles, especially the adult females, is a really big deal.
And they can lay up to how many eggs?
It depends on the species.
Okay.
So for snapping turtles, 80.
80 eggs.
For these ones, more like 20 is a very high number for them. So if you want to move them off the road, that's one of the easiest things people can do to help turtles, be a crossing guard basically. The real key is to just sort of grab them by the side and pick them up like this. Very easy to then carry them across the road. And that's really the key, is to carry them across the road to where they're going. People often get the idea that the turtle's lost and they want to put it back in the lake, the river, wherever.
Yeah.
And
but if you do, they might turn around and head right back to where they were going.
That's exactly it. They go back to the same areas to lay their eggs every year. They go back to the same areas to hibernate every year.
Sure.
And they move around following these seasonal patterns. So if the turtle is crossing the road this way and you put it back in the lake,
he's coming back.
It's going to come back again probably after you're gone. It might be 24 hours later. Yeah. But either way, it's got to start over again crossing that road.
Sure, and they're laying eggs sometimes in the side of the road in the gravel and stuff like that too, which is fascinating.
Well, crazy. They like to nest in open, sunny, sandy areas, and we've made these wonderful linear beaches along the side of every road in southern Ontario, and we've made really good nesting sites for turtles, but unfortunately it's right at the road, so that's a big risk for them. If the turtle's on the shoulder of the road and digging a hole, laying eggs, don't try to move it. It wants to be there, and if you've got the time and you can wait until it's done and then make sure it crosses the road safely, that's wonderful. Or you can call us and we'll come and do exactly that.
Okay.
Sometimes we sit for hours watching turtles do that sort of work.
So then let me ask you real quick then about snapping turtles, because there's way more that we need to unpack about you and the turtles and the snakes.
Sure.
So, but you said something about a wheelbarrow technique, because people see these great big turtles crossing the road. What's the trick?
That's right. Well, you can't do the hamburger method with snapping turtles because they can reach their jaws all the way around to the back legs. So I'm going to grab the snapping turtle and I can show you that method first.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Let's put Mrs. B back down here. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, through the magic of TV, I'm now suddenly holding a little turtle here. I can't even say baby turtle because he could be 100 years old.
Yeah, adult female. So
and
it's a Blandings turtle with the yellow chin.
Okay, and so you've got a snapping turtle that I'm going to kind of sit over here from because I'm at the biting end. So tell me a little bit about, real quick, quick way to get one across the street if I need to.
Sure. Well, first of all, this is a captive turtle, so he's not scared, and that's why he's not snapping. But if it was a wild turtle, he would be trying to snap because he would be very stressed about what's going on. And so you want to try and stay, there we go, talking about peeing on him. So here we have the back legs. I'm just going to aim at you for a minute here.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
This is how far they can snap if they want to.
Oh, fantastic.
And so you want to be behind there. So you can get the back of the shell, and if you're really strong, you can pick him up like this and hold him. That works. But you have to have pretty strong wrists to be able to do that. And as the turtles get bigger, like you said, yours was quite large.
Yeah.
Some of the people who work here can't lift up a really big one like that. I mean, our biggest one, I've sprained my wrist twice trying to pick him up out of his enclosure. So, it can be very challenging. So why pick him up at all? So if I can demonstrate, we'll just pretend my leg is the ground here.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to pick him up off the ground, show off, just grab that back of the shell tip them up like a wheelbarrow, and then kind of wheelbarrow them off the road.
Oh, smart.
Sometimes they'll walk, and sometimes you got to kind of turn them back and forth, kind of waddle them off.
Yeah.
But either way it works. It's the easiest, fastest way to get them off the road, especially if you don't have any tools. Plastic snow shovels also work like a dream.
Yeah.
If you've got one of those cheap snow shovels in the back of your car,
Okay.
they work really well too to kind of scoop them off the road.
Okay, so that's all I want to cover on our little information session here on how to get turtles across the street.
Okay.
The rest is about you.
Sure, whatever.
Okay, so let's put these down.
All right.
So Jeff, what is it then about these that made you create this space? Where, like, how did this space come to fruition? How did all this happen?
Well, we could be here for a long time. So I was early on doing outreach programming through a different company that I started with my partner at the time. And we would travel all over Ontario doing educational programming about snakes and turtles and frogs, but especially so snakes. That was our main focus.
Okay.
And native Ontario snakes, not random pet store snakes and that kind of stuff. We really wanted to focus being biologists who were creating jobs for ourselves as opposed to hobbyists who really like snakes and want to talk to people. We focused on conservation issues related to the snakes of the region. And in order to do that, of course, you have to have various permits and things like that. And some of the regulations changed after we'd been doing it for about 10 years. And so we found ourselves faced with the possibility of needing to have a public facility in order to keep doing what we were doing for the long term, just because of some of the changes to government regulations.
Sure.
And so we started looking at where could we have a public facility, and we found this place, which of course at one time was a house, but a very, very large and unusual house. And with the 20 hectares attached to it, with creeks and ponds and wetlands and all these things, and right by the highway, and we thought, well, that seems like a really good possibility. Let's dive in and give it a try. I don't know that I'd do it again, having gone through the process.
Well, you get to pioneer it, though, right?
Yeah,
That's always what happens.
It's one of those. If I
where
knew
did
then, what I
so
know
where
now.
did the turtles and the snakes come from? Because sometimes it's a rescue thing, sometimes
it's
they're where.
It's a wide mix.
Tell me that a little bit.
It's a wide mix. We do get some that come in from various agencies. Some of them are born in captivity, and in fact, some of them have been born here. Some of the animals we have, if you look back, we've had them sort of like 6 generations now that we've been breeding them for our own programming. We've bred some species here that nobody else has ever bred in Canada before. Like blue racers, for example. That would be certainly one example of an endangered species that we have bred here multiple times now. And some of the others certainly are species that a lot of times people aren't really working with. Not that they're hard to work with, they're just not the focus for some of the bigger zoos and public centers and that kind of stuff.
Sure. And one of the fascinating things you told me was about this really cool turtle here called a pig-nosed turtle.
Yes.
All right.
Sure.
And how did that get here? Because that's a whole crazy aspect of what's going on in the world too. People doing things they shouldn't.
Yeah, well, so the pig-nosed or fly river turtle that we have was somebody's pet, and they actually didn't want it anymore. Somebody who had volunteered here some of the time saw it, I think, posted on Kijiji, but I'm not 100% sure, and he obtained the animal. But he actually didn't have the capacity to hold it. He just wanted to make sure it went somewhere really useful, where it would have a good home. And so then he brought it to us and said, "Can you guys look after it?"
But it's not supposed to be here.
No, they're actually all of them are illegally imported into Canada. There's never been permits issued to legally import them into the country, but people do bring them in. For commercial purposes. And I've definitely seen babies for sale in pet stores and that kind of stuff, but they're not supposed to be here now. Obviously, this one's not going to go back to Indonesia.
For sure.
That's not going to happen.
No.
But he's here now, and we'll give him a good home.
Well, welcome to Canada.
It's a useful education specimen, that's for sure. I mean, they're really fascinating to look at, and they're the only freshwater turtle that has sea turtle flippers, so that's pretty cool.
Cool.
You can see why people are attracted to them. The challenge is they get to be this large. They get to be as big as that snapping
Well, it's
turtle.
like people with micro pigs and all these things that don't stay micro and all. We're not going there today.
For sure.
So what I am curious about though, and I love this because there's that whole people talk about people who rescue animals, but they're kind of like rescuers in name only. They're rhinos, right? They kind of save, they share stuff on Facebook, but they've never actually been there. Maybe they don't have a pet they've rescued. And I encourage people to, rescue dogs and rescue cats and whatever else, right? Now, you spent the last 3 days out in the bush, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, you're not just off the road a little bit. You're out in the bush, no cell signal. And what were you doing? You were releasing turtles.
Well, we weren't releasing yesterday. We were actually surveying for adult turtles or any turtles we could find in a fairly remote part of our project region. So our turtle project spans from Barrie all the way to Bracebridge and Parry Sound. It's a huge chunk of central Ontario. It's a massive project. We have thousands of turtles that we've marked, so we know if we catch the same ones again, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there are parts of our area where you really can't get there easily. You can't drive there. We can hike so far from the road in a single day, but there are places where that just doesn't work. So we did a 3-day trip from sort of one lake downstream to another
water
area.
levels are down this year.
Water
so
levels
that's
are down.
difficult.
We spent a lot of time carrying canoes instead of actually paddling them.
Yeah.
It was a challenge, but we did find one of the Blandings turtles that was our target species.
Cool.
So that was a successful mission, let's say.
And now you have a facility here then, back to the launching of the turtles and releasing of turtles. You do have a part of the facility here that helps the turtles lay their eggs and that's not just a small number. Like how many baby turtles?
We have over 8,000 eggs this year for that project. So the START project, as we call it, is based out of the Turtle Hospital building at the south end of the park. So we have to maintain biosecurity between the wild turtles and our captive animals here. These turtles, everything, we think they're fairly healthy, but they could be carrying pathogens and parasites. Exactly. We don't want to have that scenario of we get something infected and send it back to the wild.
Sure.
So all of those activities are field research and eventually the rehabilitation of injured turtles. We're not quite there yet. And all the babies that we're hatching, that is all in the other building.
Okay, so we've got lots of stuff we can talk about on turtles, and they can always go to the website and check this stuff out. But I want to talk about snakes. So I'm going to give a little flash of magic here on the camera. I'm going to let you grab a snake.
Okay, I'll come back with a couple.
All right, and the magic continues, and now we suddenly have snakes. So, Jeff, what are you holding on to right now?
Well, this is an eastern fox snake, and this one is a blue racer.
And this one, I love the color of this one. He is a really cool, he's kind of like that Weimaraner blue-gray.
Yep.
Really interesting. So, how do these snakes come into your hands and why? Like why are, you know what, I'm going to back this up a bit.
Sure.
Why are you holding snakes?
Well, I've always been fascinated with them and spent a lot of time working with them, obviously.
Yeah.
Both of these are species of conservation concern. This one's actually the rarest snake in Canada, with less than 200 of them left in the wild on the one island that they still live down in Lake Erie. And
you need to let me know what island so I don't go walking around.
Well, Peely Island, if you enjoy the wine, go for a wine tour, that sort of thing.
Awesome.
This one is actually more rare from a global perspective.
Okay.
Because this one's more abundant farther south in the U.S. It's just really rare here.
Okay.
This one is more rare on the global perspective, but doing a little bit better here in Ontario. And you can find them in our region.
Okay.
But only in a very small slice of the Georgian Bay coastline.
Now, a little bit of advice to people if they see a snake, not just start handling it. That's
always best to leave the wild animals alone. You should have a good reason to be bothering the wildlife, and it usually involves permitting and stuff like that as well. And these are endangered species, so you can't just go and sort of do whatever you want with them. But it is obviously helpful to move them off of the road. If they're in harm's way, you don't need a permit to move them out of harm's way.
Okay, so in the easiest Coles Notes version, how do you get a snake off the road other than just try and...
Yeah, just scoop it up, and same as the turtle, move it the other direction. And
awesome.
But obviously, make sure it's not a rattlesnake, which in our area, there are a few places where it's possible to the northwest of Simcoe County, the Georgian Bay, Severn River watershed, that area.
Yeah.
It's not likely, but it's possible.
Well, not to show my age, but I'm sure you and I both remember Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and there's this whole scene at the end where a pet store catches fire, and he gets out the baby ducks, and he gets all the puppies and all the kittens and everything all out first, and he keeps running past a snake tank, and at the final scene, he comes flying out with all these snakes in his hands, screaming because he had to finally save them, but it was like the last resort. Yeah. People are scared of snakes. What is something that you believe can get over that? Is it's not about handling them, or is it coming here?
Well, exposure. People can get more comfortable with them if they try, and if they want to. Often it's just that what they think they know about them is incorrect, and they need some correct information. But a lot of times it's just it's more than just information. It's exposure, getting more comfortable.
So how do people get over the fear of the snakes? Like, because I think people are truly fascinated by it. Like, I'm watching you do this, but there is still that little, well, it could just...
Yeah. We've actually had people come here specifically to try and get past their fears, and they've always been successful if they're really genuinely interested in trying to do that and they're willing to stick with it, because it doesn't happen quickly.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it does happen pretty quickly. You see people who are at an event, for example, we're there with the animals. Person comes in, they're nervous, unfamiliar, afraid to touch it. You spend a few minutes talking with them, they get a little more comfortable. They see us, basically, this would be called modeling, in the behavioral lingo. And so they see this happening, and nothing's bad is really happening. And after a few minutes of that, they start thinking, well, maybe I'll try touching it, and they touch it, and it's okay. And then next thing they know, 5 minutes later, they're holding a snake.
Yeah.
And they came in saying, I'll never hold that.
Yeah.
And they do. And it's funny how it happens, but it happens consistently. I've seen it hundreds of times.
You've got something, though, that there's a connection. There's got to be something, maybe it's a spiritual connection or just more than just fascination. What is it? God, that's a cool snake.
I think part of the connection is that they are animals that other people don't appreciate, and I've never really understood that. I think to me they're amazing, beautiful creatures, and they don't deserve the reputation that they have. And I've always felt that that's a real shame, and just try to get people to actually appreciate how awesome they are. Not that they necessarily want to have a whole bunch of them in their basement or anything, but at least to the point where people don't feel the need to whack them with shovels when they find them in the wild. But I like a lot of other animals too. Part of it for me is that I feel like these are animals that I can have a direct impact on their conservation. It's hard for me to try and make a difference for polar bears. I mean, we do whatever we can from that perspective. This center is actually, we're trying to be carbon neutral, for example, and we do things like heating with firewood instead of fossil fuels and stuff like that. But that's about the most I can do. Whereas with these animals, the threats to them, whether it's being hit by cars or people killing them, I can have a direct impact on those threats and actually help to turn populations around. Yeah. And so that, for me, is a big motivator of why I choose these species compared to some of the others.
Just because they look different, I love that you're able to move past that whole aspect of, people are scared of them or, they're kind of creepy, but they're not. They're really neat.
They're fascinating animals, honestly, they really are. And I like to help people make that transition. That's a big part of what motivates me to do this, is to share that joy with others and get people just to start to change their mind about them.
So what's new for you in your direction? Not so much scales, but what is your real passion? Where do you want to move next with the snakes and with the turtles?
Well, certainly I've been focusing a lot more on turtles in recent years, and we've been developing our turtle hospital in the other building at the other end of the park, and that's nearly done. So that's been a huge thing for me over the last couple of years to get that to completion. I'm sort of staying with that as much as I can to get it there.
All right.
And then after that, we'll have to see.
Okay.
Not too sure.
So how do you feel that you and your son do you find a new bonding that you're able to share some of these things with him?
Sure.
Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. He knows all the turtle species of Canada when he comes through here, and he can name them all, and he helps to feed some of the turtles and that kind of stuff. He'll hold the snakes. He can actually pick one up out of its cage when I open the door, and he'll carry it and sit on the stairs, and then he'll go and put it back in the cage when we're done, that kind of stuff, which is awesome to have that kind of connection. And I look forward to sharing more of those opportunities with him as he gets older. Definitely changes your perspective on a lot of things, and it in some ways it's a bit of a challenge as well, because it means that I almost have to care more about some things that I didn't used to care about as much. I could before focus on I'm trying to save the animals, even if everything falls apart for humanity. Yeah. But now I feel like I've got to try and help out in that respect as well. Yeah. So,
what do you find lets you down about people? About that maybe you choose animals over people?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people I like too. Yeah. But people, for me, a lot of it comes down to the needs of the many versus the needs of the few sort of thing. Yeah. People as a species are doing pretty darn well overall. I mean, we dominate the planet. Yeah. And if I mean, I certainly care a lot about our fellow humans, but as a species, we need to do some things differently, and we're displacing all these other species. And so, for me, it's not about the individual animals. I mean, it's not that I don't like or like this particular racer. It's
That's
that
a neat
I think we should still have this species in Canada. And we've wiped them out from the mainland. We have only one population left on an island, and it's declining. And it's a species that I work with because, again, I feel like I can maybe make a difference for that species and keep it around.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that drives me. So it's not anything that I feel like bad about people so much as just, we need to do some things differently if we want to keep the planet the way that we would like it to be. And the planet will go on without us,
Yeah, there's an old saying that if the planet ever just got tired of humans, it'll just shake us off like fleas and let everything else keep going.
Well, we may shake ourselves off of it. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know.
But, can Canada survive if this species was wiped out from the country? Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think it makes us a poorer place. And if we take out too many chunks of that puzzle, we may not like what's left afterwards, right?
Yeah. So what do you find is the most rewarding part then? Like, there's got to be some things that you've accomplished. Give me some of those things, some of the big things you've been able to achieve, because you've got a lot of people aware now of turtles and snakes and the harmony of it and the education aspect. There are kids groups going through here nonstop, which would explain some of the noise in the background. People are fascinated. Tell me about what you feel your accomplishments are.
Some milestones for me is certainly getting this place open to the public. It's been, this is season 9, I guess, for us here of public visitation. But what people often don't realize, it took 7 years to get it ready to open in the first place.
Wow.
It was we basically ran out of money after 2 years and had to do everything a little bit at a time, and it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Getting it open to the public was a big milestone for me. And then beyond that, we launched this turtle project 6 years ago, and in the course of that, we still have a long way to go, but we've caused the protection of over 1,200 square kilometers of habitat in central Ontario through the work that we've been doing.
Crawled over my foot. It's like, what is that, a turtle?
So that's a big one for me, is protecting the habitat through some of the field work that we do.
Yeah.
So that's a big milestone for sure.
Cool. So what is next for you then? So you're continuing to grow this place, or are you franchising? Is it something you want to do, or you want to see more of, or what is your
no franchises? That's
good?
For sure.
Okay. So then, what is it then about what you want to do with the animals here? What is the next step for all of them? More animals, or continue to hatch
more
turtles?
We've got a lot of education animals here, but I want to do more on the direct conservation side. We are looking at some captive breeding efforts for a couple of different species, including potentially this one. So that's why we've been breeding it in captivity here. It's kind of a build-up to working at the kinks, let's say, of what we might do in the future with captive breeding to bring it back to the mainland in Ontario, or there's other projects like that I'd like to spend more time on in the future. Those are the areas where I see, from me personally, that I want to move more into as we get the turtle hospital up and running, and then that enables us to take on some of those other things.
Sure. Now, what do you find people come here looking for? Do you think that they come here looking for just these, or is everybody coming here looking for the big python or an anaconda or something they're not going to normally find? You don't have any of that sort of stuff.
Well, no anacondas. We've got at least one decent-sized python. It's about 4 meters long, so that's big by most people's standards.
Yeah.
Again, it's an unwanted pet that we have. And we try to keep a smattering of those to answer some of those questions. Yeah. And it's like, if you want to get a pet snake, please don't buy one of these. There are some other great pet snake choices out there, and we have those ones on display too.
Awesome.
But
well, it seems like there's a lot going on, and I really encourage people to check this out. I love your passion for this, because it's something that's very environmental, and it's a beautiful thing you're doing. So thank you. I want to thank you for being a guest on my show. It's amazing how fast 30 minutes goes by.
It sure does.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. No snakes.
You sure?